The sun was shining brightly in the real world, but inside his room, 13-year-old Theo was huddled in his gaming chair, completely focused. The hum of his PC filled the air, a soft, steady sound that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Today was the day he'd been waiting for. World Dive, Genesis, the most anticipated virtual reality game ever created, had finally been released. It wasn't just a game, it was a fully immersive world powered by the most advanced neural link technology to date. Players didn't use controllers or keyboards. They connected their minds directly to the game, entering a world as real as life itself. Theo had saved up for over a year, doing chores, tutoring younger kids, and even selling homemade bookmarks online just to afford the headset. Now, with the device snug on his head and the initiation sequence beginning, he braced himself for the unknown. A swirl of colors enveloped his vision, and a sensation of weightlessness washed over him. Then, suddenly, his feet hit solid ground. He opened his eyes and gasped. Before him stretched a breathtaking landscape of floating islands, sparkling waterfalls cascading into the sky, and trees with golden leaves that shimmered like stars. The sky above was painted with hues of violet and turquoise, two suns hovering near the horizon. The air was fresh and sweet, filled with the distant sound of music-gentle chimes and melodious whispers that seemed to be carried on the wind. A soft voice echoed in his ears. "Welcome, Theo, to the realm of Eternia. You are the chosen one." He turned to find a figure standing beside him, an ethereal being made of light and mist. She had no defined face, but her presence radiated warmth and peace. "What do you mean, the chosen one?" Theo asked, unable to hide his amazement. "You have been granted the power of the Aeon Crystal," she replied. "Your purpose is to restore balance to this world. Darkness has begun to spread, and only you can gather the lost elements needed to bring harmony once again." Theo nodded slowly, still trying to process everything. He looked down at his hands and saw that his body was different, taller, stronger, and dressed in sleek, futuristic armor with glowing blue lines tracing his limbs. A small emblem glowed on his chest, the mark of the Aeon. "Where do I start?" he asked, a sense of adventure rising in his chest. The being of light pointed toward a distant mountain floating in the sky. "Your first task lies in the sky caverns. You must retrieve the Orb of Clarity guarded by the Sentinels of Wind. But beware, young travelers, the path is filled with trials, and only those with courage, wisdom, and kindness may proceed." With a flash of light, the guide vanished, and a floating interface appeared before Theo. It displayed his name, health bar, abilities, and a quest log. He tapped on the first mission, and a glowing trail of light appeared on the ground, guiding him toward the edge of the island. As he walked, creatures and fellow players passed by. Some were knights clad in golden armor. Others were scholars in robes floating inches above the ground, and still others were fantastical animals with talking eyes and glowing tails. Everyone seemed to be on their own journey. Theo's heart thudded with excitement as he reached a circular platform made of glass. A panel lit up with a single word: teleport. He stepped onto it, and in an instant, the world around him twisted and dissolved, reassembling high above the clouds on another floating island shaped like a crescent moon. The sky cavern stood before him, grand and ancient, their stone archways carved with runes that shimmered when he walked near. Inside, wind howled through crystalline tunnels that sparkled like diamonds. He had to solve riddles, navigate wind mazes, and even befriend a mischievous air spirit who kept trying to race him through impossible courses. Despite the challenges, Theo never gave up. Every time he solved a puzzle or helped a fellow player, his Aeon emblem glowed brighter. It seemed that kindness and cooperation were more powerful than brute strength in this world. Eventually, deep within the caverns, he reached a chamber where the Orb of Clarity floated above a pedestal surrounded by 3 Sentinels of Winter, graceful beings with wings of silver and eyes like the sky. "Why do you seek the orb?" asked the lead sentinel, his voice like a breeze. "To restore balance," Theo said honestly. "To help this world and learn what it means to be a hero." The sentinels looked at one another and then smiled. "Then the orb is yours." As he reached out and touched it, a vision flashed in his mind: an ancient tree with roots that spanned entire continents, its leaves whispering forgotten stories. The next step of his journey had just begun. Theo left the caverns with renewed purpose, his inventory now displaying the orb, and his map revealing new destinations: the Crystal Dunes, the Whispering Forest, and the Sunken City. Each area held a unique element needed to complete the Aeon Crystal. As he stepped onto the teleport pad once more, the wind behind him whispered his name, and he couldn't help but smile. For the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged. Theo appeared in the middle of a vast golden desert, the crystal dunes. The sun hung high in a perfectly blue sky, and the ground sparkled with millions of tiny, gem-like particles that shifted with the wind. Each step he took crunched softly, as if he were walking on crushed glass. The wind here wasn't harsh but warm and humming with energy, like it held memories of forgotten civilizations. Far in the distance, towering structures made of glass and stone loomed ruins of an ancient kingdom buried beneath the sands. Theo pulled up his map. A glowing marker pointed toward the glass temple, where the next element, the flame of wisdom, was said to be kept. As he moved forward, a creature burst out of the sand. It had the body of a lion and the wings of an eagle, with crystalline feathers that caught the light like a prism. It let out a loud, echoing cry and swooped low. Theo instinctively ducked and rolled aside. The beast circled back, and this time, Theo raised his palm and activated a new ability he had unlocked, Tempest Pulse. A ripple of wind shot from his hand and slowed the creature mid-flight, giving him enough time to speak calmly. "I don't want to fight," he called. "I'm just passing through." The beast hovered, its crystal eyes glowing. Then, with a soft growl, it settled onto the sand and tilted its head. A notification popped up. Legendary mount opportunity. The Shardwing Guardian has taken an interest in you. Theo stepped forward slowly, holding out his hand. The creature sniffed it, then lowered its head. A new prompt appeared. Tame Shardwing? He accepted, and a blinding light enveloped them both. When it cleared, a symbol appeared on the back of Theo's hand, and Shardwing let out a happy chirp. Theo grinned. Not only had he made a new companion, but travel across the desert would now be much easier. He climbed onto Shardwing's back and took to the skies, soaring over dunes and canyons, watching the sunlight dance across the sands below. After a few hours of flying and exploring, Theo spotted a shimmering oasis surrounded by palm-like crystal trees. He landed beside it, letting Shardwing rest. As he approached the water, he noticed an old man sitting on a rock, fishing with a rod made of sapphire. The man wore a tattered robe and had a glowing symbol tattooed on his forehead, the same emblem Theo bore. "You carry the Aeon mark," the man said without looking. "Then you must be seeking the flame." "I am," Theo replied. "Do you know where it is?" The old man chuckled. "Everyone seeks it, few find it. Wisdom is not something given, it's something earned. But I can offer you a challenge." Theo nodded, eager. The man handed him a riddle inscribed on a glowing scroll. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with wind. What am I?" Theo furrowed his brow. He sat by the oasis thinking deeply. The game had thrown puzzles at him before, but this one felt ancient, deeper. He closed his eyes, remembering the sounds of the caverns and the desert wind. Then he opened them. "An echo," he said. The man smiled. "Correct. You've taken your first step toward wisdom." The ground rumbled and the oasis water shimmered. Rising from its depths was a glowing orb engulfed in orange flame. Theo reached out and touched it, and the flame of wisdom absorbed into his Aeon emblem. "Two down, many more to go," the old man said. "But remember this, strength alone cannot complete the journey. Only a heart that listens and learns may unlock the true power of the Aeon." Theo thanked him and soared back into the sky on Shardwing. His next destination was the Whispering Forest, a place of mystery and illusions. According to the map, it was northeast of the Crystal Dunes across a deep valley known as the Rift of Shadows. As they flew, the scenery gradually changed. Sand gave way to grass, and then to dense woods blanketed in mist. The forest appeared suddenly massive trees with glowing bark, their leaves whispering softly. Theo landed at the edge and dismounted. Shardwing let out a low chirp, clearly uneasy. "It's okay, buddy," Theo said, patting his side. "Wait here. I'll be back." The moment he stepped into the forest, he felt the air shift. It was cooler, but not cold like stepping into a dream. Every step he took echoed with strange sounds, distant laughter, soft singing, the rustle of leaves. A message flashed, "Whispering Forest Trial. Face your forgotten fears." The trees thickened, and the world around him dimmed. Suddenly, a shadow stepped onto the path ahead. Theo froze. It looked like himself, but younger, smaller. The other Theo stared at him with tear-filled eyes. "Why did you give up on me?" the shadow asked. "Why did you stop believing?" Theo felt a lump in his throat. This game wasn't just about collecting magical items. It was about facing the parts of yourself you tried to forget. He took a step forward. "I didn't give up," he whispered. I was scared. I thought I had to grow up and leave you behind, but I was wrong. You're part of me." The younger Theo nodded, then smiled, fading into light. The path ahead lit up, revealing a clearing with a glowing flower, the heart blossom, said to hold the element of empathy. Theo knelt and touched it. Warmth spread through his body as the third piece of the Aeon crystal formed. He turned to leave but heard a cry nearby. Investigating, he found a girl trapped under a fallen tree branch. She wore the robes of a healer and looked like she had been trying to help a wounded creature when the accident occurred. Theo helped lift the branch and offered her a potion. She smiled gratefully. "My name's Arya," she said. "You're the one with the Aeon emblem, aren't you?" "Yeah," he replied. "Just finished the trial." "Then you're not alone anymore," she said with a wink. "I've been searching for the Aeon wielder to aid them. There's still so much to do, and the final piece lies in the sunken city." Together, they made their way back to Shardwing, and for the first time, Theo felt the weight of his journey lessen. He wasn't just a player in a game, he was part of a story much bigger than himself. The journey to the sunken city began at dawn. Theo and Arya rode Shardwing across the skies, watching the world below shift from glowing forests to stormy cliffs, and then to an endless stretch of ocean that shimmered under the rising sun. Far in the distance, towers of coral and ruined spires rose from the water remnants of the once great city of Lumerus. The map indicated that the final elemental shard, the Tear of Unity, was hidden within its deepest vaults. But Lumerus wasn't just underwater, it was surrounded by a magical storm that kept most players away. It was said to be haunted by ancient echoes, fragments of emotions left behind by the fallen civilization. As they neared the city's outskirts, the wind grew cold and the clouds darkened. The sea roared beneath them and lightning danced across the sky. Shardwing let out an uneasy growl and slowed. Arya placed her hand on Theo's shoulder. "This is it, the final trial. Are you ready?" Theo nodded, though his heart thumped nervously. "Let's dive." They descended toward a glowing beacon on a nearby floating platform where an old diving station still functioned. A game prompt appeared. "Equip the ether dive suit?" He selected yes, and in a flash, his armor transformed into a sleek, translucent suit with fins, glowing lines, and a smooth helmet that sealed with a hiss. Arya's outfit changed as well, resembling a water mage's ceremonial robe, complete with a shimmering cloak that fluttered even without wind. Together, they stepped onto the launch pad, and the ground vanished beneath them. They plunged into the ocean depths. The descent was slow and breathtaking. Schools of glowing fish darted past, jellyfish the size of umbrellas pulsed with color, and whales made of starlight sang in the distance. The ruins of Lumerus soon came into view, columns toppled sideways, temples half buried in coral, and strange murals glowing faintly along the seabed walls. A message appeared: "Welcome to Lumerus. Final trial initiated. Seek the Vault of Echoes." Theo and Arya swam through a broken archway, their motion aided by small propulsion flares attached to their boots. Inside, the city was eerily silent except for the gentle hum of water and the occasional distant echo-soft cries, songs, and laughter trapped in bubbles that floated by. The Vault of Echoes was located beneath the Great Temple of the Tides, but to enter it, they had to unlock the Door of Remembrance. Surrounding it were 4 statues, each missing a gemstone from its chest. Arya inspected one and read the inscription aloud. "To pass, offer memories of love, loss, courage, and trust." The clues were clear. Emotional echoes scattered throughout the city would guide them to the stones. Theo and Arya split up temporarily, searching the ruins. Theo entered what looked like a collapsed market square. Inside, a memory bubble floated above a stall. He touched it, and suddenly, he was standing in the past, watching 2 sea elf children trade seashells and laugh. Their joy was contagious, warm, and pure. When the vision ended, a heart-shaped gem was left in the air. The gem of love. Elsewhere, Arya found a shadowy chamber filled with weeping sounds. When she reached the center, she saw the spirit of a woman holding a locket, her face etched with sorrow. As Arya approached, the woman faded, leaving behind the gem of loss. They met back at the door and inserted both gems into the statues. 2 lights flared, and the door hummed slightly. Next came courage. Theo had to venture into the depth hall, where a monstrous serpentine machine, half coral, guarded a glowing chamber. With quick reflexes and clever use of the Tempest Pulse and his newly acquired Aqua Shield ability, he outmaneuvered the beast and retrieved the 3rd gem. Arya, meanwhile, faced the hardest of all: trust. She entered a garden overrun with illusion magic. There, she She saw images of betrayal, fear, and abandonmental tests of her faith in herself and others. But at the center stood a single tree glowing with silver leaves. She placed her hand on it and whispered, "I believe." And the illusions vanished, leaving behind the final gem. With all four inserted, the door slowly opened, revealing a massive chamber lit by glowing runes. At its center floated the tear of unity, pulsing with every color imaginable. Theo stepped forward and placed his hand on it. The moment he did, a final vision engulfed them both. They stood in the heart of Eternia, beneath the world tree glimpsed in earlier visions. Around them stood all the people that helped players and spirits alike. The Aeon Crystal hovered before them, glowing bright. "You have gathered all that is needed," a voice spoke, ancient and wise. "But one last test remains, not of power, but of choice." The world tree revealed two paths, one leading to the Ascension Chamber, where Theo could claim ultimate power and reshape the game world as he saw fit, and another toward the Gate of Continuance, which would reset the Aeon Crystal's energy and allow new players to experience the full journey, preserving the game's balance and stories for generations. Theo looked at Arya. "If I take the power, it ends here. But if I share it, this world lives on." Arya nodded. "You've already shown what kind of hero you are." Without hesitation, Theo chose the Gate of Continuance. The Aeon Crystal rose, shining like a new sun, and released its energy in a wave of light that swept across the realm. The corruption faded, the skies cleared, the floating islands steadied, and the forgotten places of the world bloomed once more. Theo and Arya stood beneath the world tree as it blossomed, its leaves sparkling with light. A final prompt appeared: "Quest complete, balance restored. Would you like to return to the real world?" Theo hesitated. The journey had been long, emotional, and full of wonder. He had grown not just in the game, but as a person. "Yes," he said finally, "but I'll be back." Light surrounded them, and the world slowly faded. Theo opened his eyes to the soft hum of his computer and the quiet stillness of his bedroom. The Neuralink headset retracted gently, and the virtual world of Eternia faded into the recesses of his memory, bright, beautiful, and unforgettable. The real world felt almost too quiet in comparison. The light from his monitor displayed a notification: "World Dive, Genesis main quest complete. You have unlocked Legacy mode. Thank you for restoring balance." Theo blinked and sat back, overwhelmed by everything he had experienced. The emotions, the memories, the friendships, it all felt more than just a game. It felt like a lifetime had passed in those virtual hours. The final choice still echoed in his mind. The decision not to seize power, but to preserve the journey for others. It had been the right choice. Still, a part of him missed Eternia already. He got up and stretched, glancing out the window where the real sun now shone above rooftops and tree branches swaying in a morning breeze. His phone buzzed on his desk. A message from Arya, whose real name, he learned, was Lila, flashed on the screen. "That was amazing. I'm so glad we met. Want to team up in Legacy mode this weekend?" Theo smiled. He typed back, "Definitely. Wouldn't want to explore it without you." Over the next few days, life slowly returned to normal. He went to school, helped his younger brother with homework, and even joined a local robotics club. But something in him had changed. He was more patient, more thoughtful. When he faced problems, he approached them not with frustration, but with curiosity. His classmates noticed it too. He wasn't just the kid who liked games anymore. He became someone others came to, for help, for ideas, for encouragement. The lessons of Eternia had stayed with him. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Theo found himself staring at the clouds and thinking about the floating islands in the game. The memory brought a smile to his face. He couldn't wait to log back in, not for loot or glory, but for the wonder of the journey. That weekend, he and Lila met in Legacy mode. It was different from the main quest, more open-ended, filled with community missions, player-built realms, and cooperative puzzles that relied on kindness and collaboration rather than combat. They visited villages built by other players, helped plant luminous trees to restore faded forests, and even composed a melody in the echoing hall that became part of Eternia's ambient soundtrack. Theo also began to create his own quest-small stories about characters who faced challenges of heart and spirit. Other players started to follow his trails, praising them for their depth and meaning. He was no longer just a participant, he was becoming a storyteller within the world. One evening, while exploring a hidden temple with Lila, they stumbled upon a secret vault. It wasn't listed on any map, and there was no prompt or quest marker. Inside was a glowing stone tablet with an inscription: "To those who choose hope over fear, and compassion over conquest, Eternia offers a gift unseen. Suddenly, Theo's Aeon emblem flared back to life. A swirl of light lifted him from the ground, and he was transported to a realm he had never seen before, the Weaver's Nexus. It was a place between worlds, where the game's designers had encoded special content only unlockable through acts of empathy and wisdom. The Nexus was filled with threads of light, weaving together memories, landscapes, and player choices into a living tapestry. A figure stood at the center, tall, being made of woven stars. "You have walked with truth," it said. "You have not only completed the quest, but you have preserved its soul. Therefore, we grant you the title of Keeper." A system message chimed, "Congratulations, Theo. You are now a Keeper of Eternia. As a Keeper, you may design story arcs, protect balance, and guide new players in their journeys." Theo was stunned. "But I'm just me." "You are more than you believe," the star being replied. "A Keeper is not chosen by strength but by heart." Lila appeared beside him moments later, having received the same honor. She laughed in disbelief. "I guess we're official now." They spent the rest of the evening in the Nexus, learning how to shape realms, craft narrative puzzles, and plant emotional seeds that would grow into player-driven experiences. Theo built a floating sanctuary where lost players could come for comfort and reflection. Lila created a musical tower where melodies unlocked hidden paths. Together, they watched players from around the world discover these places, leave messages of hope, and write their own stories. Outside of the game, Theo's world expanded too. Inspired by the creativity of Eternia, he began writing stories, entering competitions, and even started a blog where he shared tales inspired by his in-game adventures. Teachers noticed. One day, his English teacher asked him to stay after class. "Theo, your last essay felt like it was written by someone who had seen more than just books. It was powerful. Where did you learn to write like that?" Theo smiled. "A game taught me." The teacher raised an eyebrow, curious. "Then I'd love to see what else this game inspires." Months passed, and the world continued to change. Theo grew. So did Eternia. New expansions came, but the heart of the game, the journey of balance, kindness, and discovery, remained intact, thanks to the Keepers who protected it. One day, a young player named Kai stumbled into Theo's sanctuary. He was quiet, unsure, and kept his avatar hidden beneath a dark hood. But something in his movements reminded Theo of himself back when he had first arrived. Theo approached gently. "Welcome. Looking for something?" Kai hesitated. "I guess I'm looking for who I'm supposed to be." Theo smiled. "Then you've come to the right place. Let me show you something." He led Kai to the Hall of Mirrors, a place where players could see visions of their potential. Inside, Theo whispered the same words that had once been spoken to him: "You are the chosen one, not because of what you can do, but because of who you are." The boy nodded, a small light appearing on his chest, the first glow of an Aeon emblem. Theo watched, heart full, as another story began. And he knew then that his journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. As time moved on, Theo's presence in Eternia grew into something extraordinary. He wasn't just known as a keeper, he was seen as one of the world's quiet legends. Not because he boasted great power or conquered every challenge, but because he helped others find their paths, their strengths, their stories. Every new player who stumbled into his sanctuary spoke of how it felt different from other places, calmer, brighter, warmer. Theo didn't chase recognition, but stories about him spread through message boards, shared videos, and fan art. Some players described moments of hope they had in his gardens or memories of how he guided them through grief using only quiet words and a gentle presence. Even players who typically rush through combat missions began to pause at Theo's crafted shrines and puzzle realms. One day, while walking through the luminous valley, a serene landscape he helped design, Theo received a message from the game's developers. It wasn't a prompt or a system notification. It was personal. "Dear Theo, we've been watching your work with admiration. Would you be interested in helping us shape the next expansion?" He sat back, stunned. The developers of World Dive, Genesis, were legendary in the gaming community. They were known not just for building massive worlds, but for their commitment to emotional storytelling and meaningful experiences. Theo typed back, hesitant but excited, "I'd love to." Within a week, they granted him temporary developer access, a special toolset that allowed him to design environments, write lore, and even program simple interactions. He met with their creative team through voice calls and digital meetings, where he shared his ideas not as a professional, but as someone who had lived inside the world. "I don't want to just create more places to fight or collect rewards," he said during one meeting. "I want to create places where players feel something where they walk away changed." The developers listened, intrigued. Over the next month, Theo helped build an entirely new zone, the Dreaming Marsh, a surreal region where players navigated puzzles based on memories, fears, and hopes. It was filled with glowing reeds, floating orbs that played forgotten songs, and giant mirrored lakes that reflected alternate versions of a player's avatar based on their choices. At the heart of the marsh was a mysterious monument called the Lantern Tree, a massive, bioluminescent structure that responded to players' emotional states. The more kindness and cooperation they showed, the more the tree would bloom with color and offer new paths forward. The feature became a hit. Players from all over the world posted clips of the tree reacting to their interactions, whether helping a stranger, healing an enemy, or simply sitting beside someone who had failed a trial. Theo watched in awe as people used his content not just to play, but to heal, reflect, and connect. But the real moment of transformation came when a school for children with emotional trauma contacted the game developers. They shared that several of their students had made incredible progress after spending time in the Dreaming Marsh. For the first time, some of them were opening up about feelings they'd never spoken aloud. One teacher wrote, "This game and Theo's content became a bridge between their inner world and the real one." The letter left Theo speechless. He stared at it, realizing the true power of storytelling, of empathy, and of games used not just for fun, but for good. It was more than he ever imagined when he first logged in. Meanwhile, in real life, Theo was growing too. He had submitted an essay about his experiences in Eternia to a national youth writing competition. It was titled The Keeper's Path: Lessons from a Virtual World. The essay detailed the emotional challenges he faced in the game, how he learned to choose compassion over control, and how that shaped the way he viewed the real world. A month later, he received word that he'd won first place. He was invited to speak at a student conference in front of thousands of young writers and creators. On the day of the event, standing backstage in his suit and tie, Theo felt the same nerves he had when entering the Vault of Echoes or standing before the Aeon Crystal. But just like in the game, he took a breath and stepped forward. His speech was quiet, heartfelt, and honest. "I used to think games were just for escape," he said, "but Eternia showed me they could be for growth, for connection, for truth. Sometimes, it takes stepping into another world to find out who you really are in this one." The audience erupted into applause. Afterward, dozens of students came up to him with questions, ideas, and their own stories. Some had played World Dive. Others had never touched a game in their lives but felt inspired to create something meaningful. That night, Theo sat on his bed, reflecting. He remembered the first time he had entered the game, the loneliness he felt before, the confusion, the excitement. And he remembered how it all changed because of a choice to help instead of take, to heal instead of control. Back in Eternia, new expansions were being tested. Theo, now a part-time consultant for the development team, helped test a beta zone called the Memory Isles, where players revisited pivotal choices from earlier quests. Only this time, they saw their impact from other characters' perspectives. It was a powerful tool for empathy. In one storyline, a decision Theo made to spare a character once thought to be a villain was revealed to have changed an entire region's fate. The ripple effects were shown in cascading visions, and other players began to understand how small kindnesses had grand echoes. Theo's influence grew, not as a celebrity, but as a mentor. Players messaged him for advice, not on leveling up, but on crafting meaningful stories, building healing spaces, and hosting safe communities. He responded to as many as he could, never with ego, always with encouragement. And then, one day, a familiar name appeared in his message box. Kaith Boy, who once said he didn't know who he was supposed to be. Now, Kai was building his own zone in legacy mode. He sent Theo an invitation. "I made something. I'd love for you to see it." Theo accepted. He spawned into Kai's realm and stood in awe. It was a floating library surrounded by falling stars. Each book was a player's memory reel or imagined written in light. At the center was a statue of a hooded figure standing before a sanctuary. On the pedestal were words that made Theo's heart catch in his chest. "Dedicated to the keeper who showed me the way." Theo said nothing for a long time. Then he whispered, "Thank you." In that moment, he understood that his journey had created another. And that story too was beautiful. Surrounded by constellations of falling stars and shelves brimming with glowing memory books. Each spine pulsed softly, humming with invisible stories waiting to be opened. He gently lifted one titled, The Day I Chose Peace, and watched as a projection shimmered above the cover, a younger Kai standing between two NPC factions, diffusing a brewing war with words instead of weapons. The boy's avatar looked different, more confident, upright, and filled with purpose. Theo smiled, touched by the echo of change he'd helped inspire. As he walked deeper into the Celestial Library, he found more tributes not to him personally, but to the idea of empathy, connection, and conscious decision-making in gameplay. A statue of two players holding hands beneath a starlit canopy bore the inscription, "Together, we choose a better world." Theo realized something profound. Eternia had grown. It was no longer just a game to explore or conquer, it had become a living space of emotion, narrative, and community. And that transformation wasn't because of developers or updates alone, it was because of the players who chose to shape it that way. He opened a portal back to his home realm, the Keeper's Sanctuary, where a small group of new players had gathered near the mirrored pond. They waved as he entered. One of them, a quiet girl named Lune, approached. "Are you the Theo?" she asked. He chuckled. "Just Theo," he said. "What brings you here?" Lune shrugged shyly. "I heard this place helps people figure things out. I don't know where I fit in yet." Theo nodded, understanding that feeling intimately. He sat by the pond's edge and gestured for her to join him. "You don't have to know everything right away," he said gently. "Sometimes the journey reveals the answer." They spent hours there, crafting symbols out of floating lotus petals, talking about in-game stories, and unlocking small side quests filled with wonder. Lune smiled for the first time that day. "I think I want to stay a while," she whispered. Theo's heart swelled. He watched her explore, remembering when he too was searching for belonging. In that moment, he realized he had become what he once needed: someone to listen, guide, and believe. Not long after, a special announcement was made by the game's creators, World Dive. Genesis was preparing for its next major evolution, Project Unity, an initiative that would merge creative player-made zones into a vast network of emotional experiences. Theo and a select few were invited to oversee it. He felt honored, but also reflective. Would this massive shift preserve the intimate beauty of the world he knew, or risk overwhelming it with size and scale? He voiced his thoughts during a private planning meeting. "Bigger doesn't always mean better," he said. "We have to protect the quiet places, the moments of stillness, the stories that change people, not just entertain them." The developers listened, and for the first time, they added a new system based on his idea. Echo Realms Small. Hidden pockets within Eternia where emotions shaped the world around the player. These realms weren't about leveling up or gathering loot. They were about feeling. Walking into an Echo Realm might trigger an environment based on the player's inner world: sunrise if they were hopeful, rainfall if they felt sorrow. The music, colors, and interactions adapted dynamically. Theo helped craft the first one, the Room of Return, where players were greeted by an NPC who resembled someone they once lost or missed. Not to mimic grief, but to offer a safe place for reflection and memory. The experience was unlike anything the game had offered before. Players sent messages like, "I didn't know I needed that," or "It felt like saying goodbye for the first time in years." Theo read each one with tears in his eyes. Offline, Theo's life began to shift too. The attention from his story, his essay, and now his developer work had reached people outside the gaming world. He was offered an opportunity to write a book not about the technicalities of gaming, but about what it meant to live in a story. The publisher titled it The Virtual Heart: Finding Meaning Through Play. In it, he wrote about the time he faced the Aeon Crystal and chose compassion over control. He wrote about Kai, Lune, and all the people who passed through his sanctuary. He explored themes of growth, loneliness, healing, and the infinite power of storytelling. The book was published the following spring and quickly gained popularity among educators, counselors, and creative professionals. Teachers began using excerpts in classrooms to show students how gaming could be more than entertainment, it could be art. Counselors referenced his ideas when helping youth who struggled to express emotions. One review said Theo bridges the digital and emotional worlds with rare clarity. Another read, "He's not just a gamer, he's a guide." Despite all the recognition, Theo remained grounded. He still logged into Eternia daily, welcoming players, listening to their journeys, and quietly expanding the sanctuary. But he also started speaking at conferences, not to boast, but to advocate. He encouraged developers to prioritize emotional intelligence in games. He called for systems that supported community over competition, empathy over ego. "A game world can be more than pixels and points," he often said. "It can be a mirror and sometimes, a window." Then came a surprise he never expected. the original creators of World Dive. Genesis invited him to co-lead their next flagship project, a sequel titled World Dive: Horizon. It will be the most ambitious interactive narrative ever attempted, entirely shaped by live player emotions and choices. He hesitated. It was a massive responsibility. But when they showed him the design concept and opening scene where the player awakens not in a battlefield, but in a quiet garden, unsure of who they are but certain they want to find out, felt the same spark he had years ago. Theo said yes. He wasn't just a player anymore. He was a builder, a dreamer, and a mentor. He spent the next year working alongside a global team of storytellers, artists, and developers. He wrote dialogue trees that adapted to tone and feeling. He designed realms that shifted based on kindness shown between strangers. And in a private corner of the world, he recreated the original mirrored pond from the Keeper's Sanctuary. It would be the heart of Horizon, a place where players could always return, sit, and reflect. On launch day, millions of players joined. Reviews were overwhelmingly positive. But more than that, communities formed instantly. People gathered in reflective realms, shared stories, hosted memorials for loved ones, and built collaborative sculptures out of digital light. One parent posted, "My daughter met someone from across the world. They now log in every night just to talk about life. They say it's where they feel most real." Theo sat quietly in his developer studio, watching it all unfold. He didn't need applause. He didn't need fame. The joy came from knowing that the world he once entered alone had become a place where others found connection, healing, and themselves. Late that night, he logged in again, not as a developer, but as Theo the Keeper. He returned to the sanctuary, now rebuilt in Horizon, and found a player sitting silently by the pond. He recognized that posture, the stillness of someone searching. "First time here?" he asked gently. The player nodded. "Yeah, just needed somewhere quiet." Theo smiled. "You found the right place." The stars shimmered overhead, and the mirrored pond rippled with light. And somewhere, far beyond the code and servers, something deeply human stirred. A connection, a moment, a story beginning again. The seasons changed, both in the real world and within the sweeping digital landscapes of World Dive. Horizon. Theo watched it all like an artist tending a living painting, brushing in tiny details where meaning was needed most. His mirrored pond sanctuary, though modest in design, had become a landmark not because of flashy mechanics, but because it resonated. Thousands of players made their pilgrimages to it, some with laughter, some with tears. They came to rest, to meet, to ponder. A space so simple, yet profound. Theo made it a point to log in under his old avatar once a week, sitting quietly at the water's edge. He didn't announce himself or reveal his role in the world's creation. He listened to the conversations, read the messages left on the smooth memory stones, and sometimes added one of his own. The most powerful stories, he once wrote, are the ones that help us understand each other better. That particular stone stayed at the pond's center, glowing a soft gold. One day, while exploring the far edges of Horizon's shifting environments, Theo came across a hidden doorway that hadn't been in any developer roadmap. It was wedged between two realms, the Valley of First Steps and the Whispering Peaks. A faint melody, nostalgic and familiar, drifted from within. Curious, Theo stepped through. What he found astonished him. It was a realm built entirely from fragments of his memories. Scenes from the earliest version of World Dive. Genesis's first time discovering the floating city, the battle against the Shadow Engine, even the original tutorial quest where he had helped an NPC find their missing compass were stitched together like a tapestry. But it wasn't just a recreation. It had been altered slightly, reimagined through the eyes of players who had crossed paths with him. In one section, he saw himself offering words of encouragement to a group of lost explorers. In another, he was standing at the heart of a pixelated village rebuilt after conflict, cheering with others. He realized this wasn't a bug or accident. It was a realm made by the players as tribute, perhaps, to what his presence in the world had meant to them. At the center of the realm was a tree, a towering silver-leafed monument called the Tree of Echoes. When he touched it, names spiraled into the air. Hundreds, then thousands. All players, all real. Many had left brief messages behind, bound to glowing leaves. Theo reached up and found a leaf marked simply, "Because of you I kept going." Another read, "You helped me feel seen." He fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Not by pride, but by the sheer gravity of it, the truth that even in a digital world made of light and code, real hearts had opened, real pain had been soothed, real lives had changed. The game had become more than fantasy. It had become a space for truth, courage, and belonging. He whispered a quiet thank you to no one in particular, and the tree pulsed gently in response, as if it had heard. Returning to the developer's space that evening, Theo added a quiet update to Horizon's source code. Echo seeds. These were small, unobtrusive items players could leave anywhere in the world. When another player encountered one, it would bloom into a message in it, a quest or item, but a personal note of encouragement, reflection, or hope. No reward, no leaderboard, just kindness shared. Within a week, the seeds had spread like wildflowers. A player struggling with loss found a seed near a waterfall that read, "Grief doesn't mean you're broken, it means you loved deeply." Another, who was new and afraid of not fitting in, discovered one under a glowing tree that said, "You matter, even if you don't see it yet." Theo didn't track them or moderate them. He trusted the world, and it proved him right. The players had learned how to care for one another. Offline, Theo continued to speak about the relationship between digital narratives and emotional resilience. His second book, Games That Heal, became part of college coursework across disciplines from literature and psychology to game design and education. But he always credited the community. "I didn't create all this," he'd say in interviews. "I just believed it could exist." He started a non-profit organization called Digital Sanctuaries, focused on developing virtual spaces for youth coping with anxiety, trauma, or social isolation. These spaces used elements from Horizon Soft environments, responsive story arcs, community guides to create safety and healing. Counselors and therapists joined the initiative, integrating it into support programs for children and teens. One letter from a school counselor read, "One of my students hadn't spoken in weeks after her father passed away. She logged into one of your sanctuaries and created a character who could cry and be heard. The next week, she spoke again. Thank you." Despite his growing influence, Theo never lost the small joys. He still explored hidden corners of the game, still marveled at players' creativity, still got excited when someone discovered a rare side quest. He often spent his evenings quietly in Horizon, watching sunsets from mountaintops, journaling thoughts in the in-game library system, or joining impromptu storytelling circles around campfires. In one such circle, a young player began telling a story about a mysterious figure who showed up whenever someone needed help, never asking for credit, always moving on once the person found their strength. The storyteller called him the Lightwalker. Theo listened quietly, heart swelling, as the other players nodded in recognition. They'd heard of the Lightwalker too. Some had even claimed to meet him. Theo said nothing, simply adding a log entry later that night. "Even legends need to rest sometimes." Years passed. Horizon evolved, expanded, and deepened. New generations of players arrived, some who had grown up hearing stories of the game from their parents. Theo took a step back from development, choosing instead to mentor younger designers and writers. He helped them understand that the most powerful mechanics weren't always the most complicated, they were the ones that made people feel. One protege, a soft-spoken coder named Amira, asked him what he thought the most important element of any game was. He answered without hesitation, "Empathy. If you can make someone care, you've already changed the world." Eventually, Theo created one final realm. It wasn't grand or complex, just a quiet beach where the waves sparkled with stars and the sand held imprints of every player who had visited. At the edge of the beach sat a small cabernet. Inside, there were no achievements, no titles, just a journal with one final entry. "Thank you for walking this path with me. I'm heading home now. But don't worry, the world is yours to shape." He left the cabin unlocked. Then, one evening, Theo logged out. Not in sadness, not in retreat, but in peace. He walked outside into the real night air, the wind brushing against his face like a memory. The sky stretched wide above him, full of constellations that reminded him of the ones in Kai's library, of the mirrored pond, of every story shared around every in-game fire. He sat on a bench, gazing up. Somewhere out there, millions of stories were still unfolding, some joyful, some painful, all deeply human. He closed his eyes and smiled. An inside world dive, Horizon, players continued to explore. They found seeds left by strangers, messages hidden in trees, echoes of kindness built into every corner. They spoke of the Lightwalker. They shared their own tales. The mirrored pond still shimmered. The stars still fell gently into the waves. And when someone asked where the keeper had gone, others would simply say, "He's part of the story now, forever."